I'm Daniel Reed, 26, married, insurance guy, lover of order and fresh mulch. Life's been smooth, suburban. I know my garbage days. I mow on Saturdays. I rinse out the recycling bin. Emily, my wife, she's polished, structured, always late but always put together. A school counselor with a clipboard smile and a color-coded planner. We bought this house 3 years ago. Split level, beige siding, 2-car garage, safe street. We even hosted a block potluck once. The kind of life you tell your parents about to make them feel like they raised you, right? Diane Porter lives next door. Early 40s, I think. Divorced. Keeps her place so clean it makes ours look like a dorm. She wears crisp denim like it's her uniform. Her blinds rise at 7 a.m. like clockwork, coffee in hand on her porch by 7:10. She's one of those neighbors who notices things. Not nosy, just observant. There's a difference. I was finishing up the side hedges when Diane came out with her watering can. Late summer sun filtered through her trees and caught the edges of her hair. She paused, not looking at me, but in that deliberate way where silence says something. "Emily's been getting home late a lot lately," she said casually, like commenting on cloud shapes. "Busy time at the school?" I blinked. "Yeah, first semester push, I think." She nodded, but didn't water. Just held the can in her hands. Always liked how structured she is. That was it. She walked back inside, leaving me with the trimmer still humming in my grip and a weird itch under my skin. The kind of itch that isn't painful, just unsettling. Later, I found myself thinking back. Stupid little moments that hadn't registered. Emily yawning through her breakfast, saying her meeting went late but not remembering which one. A text she didn't open while sitting beside me. A call from Megan work she took in the other room. Emergency grocery runs that didn't come back with any groceries. Stuff I'd brushed off. You trust the person you're married to, right? You don't zoom in on every crack in the wall unless someone points and says, "Hey, that's not supposed to be there." That night I ended up in the living room with the porch light off. Not doing anything. Just listening. There's something about quiet suburbs at night. You hear the sprinklers kick on 2 streets over. You hear car tires on gravel from 3 houses down. At 8:07, I heard our driveway. But I wasn't the only one. I noticed her silhouette first. Diane, standing just beyond her front window, behind sheer curtains. Still barely lit, not staring, watching. Emily pulled in, headlights off before the tires touched the curb, like she didn't want to wake the neighborhood. She came in the front door with a quick, "Hey," not even glancing toward the living room. No kiss, no look, just a rustle of keys and the sound of the fridge opening. I asked how her day went. Long, she said, from behind the fridge door. Everything about it felt practiced. Me on the couch, her not looking. The faint smell of a different perfume. Something off, like hearing your favorite song with one instrument missing. Not wrong, but wrong enough. I didn't say anything that night. Didn't press. Just sat there like an extra in a play I didn't audition for. When she finally went to bed, I stayed up, not angry, just hollow. Like someone had shifted the floorboards and I was waiting to fall through. Out the window, Diane's light went off. Same time as always. And for the first time, I realized I didn't want to go to bed. Not because I wasn't tired, but because I didn't want to pretend everything was fine. The knock came just after sunset. Not loud, just enough to let you know it wasn't someone selling anything. I opened the door, and there she was, Diane. Navy sweater, hair pulled back, no perfume, just her. She looked like she was on her way to return a borrowed dish or ask about a broken sprinkler. not like someone about to tilt my world. "Hey," she said, voice low, "I have something I think you should see." She didn't make eye contact when she handed it over. Plain, white envelope, no markings, no name, thick. I turned it in my hand and felt it flex. Photos. Maybe 8 or 10 of them. I stepped back and let her in. She walked like she didn't want to disturb the air, just crossed to the coffee table and waited for me to open it. Inside were photos, all color, all printed from a phone, you could tell. Not glossy, not professional, but clear enough. The first one hit like a dropped glass. Emily, in her work blazer, standing outside a hotel entrance. She wasn't alone. The man beside her had his hand on the small of her back. Not inappropriate, but not professional either. Comfortable. Familiar. Second photo, inside the hotel lobby. They were at the bar, mid-conversation, laughing. His hand was on the counter, hers just inches from it. The third, same day, same clothes, but this time they were walking toward the elevator. I stopped flipping. "Where did you get these?" I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. "They were dropped off on my porch this morning," Diane said softly. "No note, just to the neighbor on the front." I wanted to say it wasn't Emily. That it looked like her, sure, but that didn't mean anything. That people laugh in public.
That coworkers go to hotels for conferences. That maybe this was old, maybe it was a look-alike. Anything. But the fourth photo killed all that. Emily's purse, the brown one with the gold clasp she bought 3 weeks ago, and her nails freshly done in the exact shade she picked the weekend before. The blouse, blue with tiny white dots, was the same one still hanging in our laundry room after she wore it last Tuesday. "Sorry," Diane said. "I didn't know if I should show you, but I figured if it were me, I'd want to know." I didn't say anything. Just kept staring at the table like the photos might rearrange themselves into something harmless. "I don't know who took them," she added, "or why they sent them to me. Maybe they didn't want to send them to you directly. Maybe they thought I could soften it." There was no gloating in her voice, no "I told you so." Just this quiet understanding, like someone who'd seen this before and knew how much it hurt. She stood to leave. "If you want to talk about it, or not talk about it, I'm next door." I nodded. That was all I could manage. After she left, I sat there staring at the photos for a long time. I didn't call Emily. Didn't text her. I didn't even go to the bedroom when she came in later. She passed through the living room like nothing was out of place. Kicked off her shoes, opened the fridge, said she was tired and going to shower. I watched her disappear down the hall and wondered how long she'd been splitting her life between me and someone else. That night, I didn't sleep. I just kept playing it all in my head. Her stories, her late returns, her turned phone, the perfume I didn't recognize, all the things I'd filed under "marriage gets busy." I stared at the envelope on the table until the light from outside began to shift and the house started to look different, colder. Not mine. The next morning, I didn't shave, didn't iron a shirt. I just sat at the kitchen table, long enough for the coffee to go cold. By noon, I texted Diane. "Me? Still okay to drive?" Diane. "I'll drive. Be ready at 6. That was it. No need for small talk. She knew what I was asking. She probably knew before I even did. 6 o'clock sharp. Her SUV pulled into my driveway. I locked the door behind me and climbed in without a word. No music was playing, no air freshener smell, just the quiet hum of tires over pavement and the occasional click of her turn signal. We didn't talk. She didn't fill the silence, and I didn't try. There's something oddly comforting about not needing to explain yourself. She just let it be. The hotel was the kind that doesn't advertise. Tucked behind a business park, glassy and beige, with discreet signage and cars that probably belonged to people attending strategy retreats or late dinners that weren't really dinners. We parked a few rows back, facing the building. Diane handed me a coffee she'd brought without asking, still warm. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Then headlights turned into the lot, and my stomach sank. Emily. Same work blazer, same heels, same careless grace I'd watched from our doorway for years. But it was the man beside her that turned the ache sharp. Same guy from the photos. Tall, clean-cut, business confidence. He carried her bag like he'd done it before. They walked like they belonged together. Not romantic exactly, but practiced. And then she smiled. Not the quick, polite smile she gave teachers at her school. Not the tired one she gave me lately. This one was soft. Unguarded. Like someone who didn't feel watched. I didn't speak. I just watched. They entered through the side. 20 minutes later, they exited. No bags. Just her hand briefly on his shoulder as they talked. Then a hug, not a quick one, long enough to read comfort, familiarity. No kiss. None needed. Diane glanced sideways. You okay? I nodded, but it wasn't true. I wasn't okay. I just wasn't surprised anymore. It was strange how seeing it didn't hurt as much as wondering. The wondering had been worse. The guessing, the hoping I was wrong. Now I just felt hollow, like the truth had emptied something I didn't know I was still holding. The drive back was even quieter. Diane didn't ask what I was thinking. She just said, "You've seen it. That's the hardest part. Now it's about what you do next." I looked out the window. The streetlights made everything look cleaner than it was. "I don't know what comes next," I said finally. "That's okay," she said. "You don't have to know tonight." We pulled into the driveway. She waited a beat. "If you need anything, I'm across the fence. No pressure, just presence." I nodded again, and she left. Back inside, I sat on the couch. Same place I'd been the night before. Same silence, but now it didn't feel like waiting. Felt like standing at the edge of something with no map. Emily came in around 9, set her bag down, said, "Sorry, school meeting ran long." I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't pretend to believe her. She came into the kitchen the next morning, like everything was fine. Hair pulled back, blouse tucked, buttering toast like we were still in that phase where breakfast could fix things. I stood by the sink, not pretending anymore. "I saw you," I said, voice calm. No lead up, no theatrics. She paused mid-slice. "What?" "I saw you with him at the hotel."
I know. Her hand froze over the bread, knife still in it. She didn't ask which hotel, didn't act confused. "I didn't plan for it," she said quietly. "It just happened." I expected anger, or a story, or maybe denial out of habit. But not this. Not the way she folded into herself like a person already made apology, already out of fight. "You've been gone a long time," I said. "Even when you're here." She sat down at the table without her plate. No appetite, no words ready. "I just need space," I added. "That's all I'm asking." She nodded slowly, like she'd already known this part was coming. "Do you want me to leave?" "No," I said. "I'll go." I didn't pack a lot, just what fit in a duffel bag, some clothes, a toothbrush, chargers. I left the wedding photo on the dresser right where it always sat. It didn't feel like mine to take anymore. Before I zipped the bag, I looked around the room. Not for memories. I didn't want those right now. I was just making sure I didn't take anything that wasn't truly mine. Funny how clear the lines get when you know you're walking away. I texted Diane. "Me. Can I take you up on the spare room?" Diane. "Door's open." That was all.
Emily stood by the front door when I came out, arms crossed loosely like someone who didn't know how to stop someone from leaving without asking them to stay. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said. I didn't answer, not because I didn't believe her, but because it didn't matter now. I walked the 50 feet next door with a bag over my shoulder and a head full of static. The porch light at Diane's place was already on. She opened the door and just stepped back to let me in. The guest room was small, clean, a made bed, soft lamplight, and a quiet that didn't feel empty, just still. I dropped my bag and sat on the edge of the mattress, took a breath. Not peace exactly, but not war either. Later that night, Diane knocked lightly. She held 2 mugs, tea, not coffee, and wore that same navy sweater from the night before. "I'm not trying to talk you into anything," she said, handing me one. "Just thought you shouldn't sit in it alone." We sat at the edge of the couch, both looking straight ahead. "I've been through it," she said. "My ex, he didn't even try to hide it. For a while I thought it was my fault, like I'd stopped being interesting or useful. But the truth is, some people get careless with others." I didn't say much, just let her words land wherever they wanted to. At some point our hands touched, accidentally, then not accidentally. It wasn't a moment of sparks or music swelling, just warmth, contact, proof I was still a person. It didn't mean anything, not yet, but it meant I wasn't invisible. And that for now was enough. The first morning in Diane's house was quiet, in the way unfamiliar places always are. The ceiling looked different, the air felt lighter. I kept expecting to hear Emily's voice in the hallway, the distant buzz of her straightener, the slap of her heels against tile, but there was only the faint hum of the fridge and the soft clink of a spoon in a mug. Diane had already made coffee. She didn't offer it with a smile or a question. She just slid a mug across the counter like it was already part of the routine. "Cream's in the fridge," she said without turning. I took it black. That was how it started. No deep talks, no schedule, just 2 people in a house doing what needed to be done. I didn't ask about her day and she didn't ask about mine, but at night there was always tea, always that quiet between us that somehow didn't feel empty. A few days in, she cleared a closet shelf in the guest room. "That one's yours," she said plainly. No speech, no wait, just space being made. Some nights we sat out back on the porch. There was a bottle of wine tucked in a cabinet she called her divorce shelf. We opened it one Thursday when the sky turned soft and the air finally lost its summer stickiness. She poured 2 glasses and kicked off her shoes. "I bought this when my papers were finalized," she said. "Thought I'd drink it alone and cry dramatically into a pillow." I smiled. "And instead, you got a boarder with emotional baggage." She laughed, real and unfiltered.
Well, the pillow's still an option? We talked about old jobs, about how she once thought she'd move to Colorado, but never did. About how I wanted to be an architect at one point, but ended up in insurance because the internships were easier to land. She asked if I missed Emily. I didn't answer right away. "Not the version I've been living with lately," I said finally. But maybe the version I thought I was married to. That was the first time she touched my arm. Just briefly. No romance in it. Just human reassurance. It was a week later, under that same porch light, that she kissed me. No build-up, no drawn-out moment. We were walking back inside after bringing in cushions before a storm, and she paused. "Don't rush anything," she said. "But don't pretend nothing's changed either." And then her lips brushed mine. Gentle, deliberate. No fireworks, just warmth, clarity. Like setting down something heavy you didn't know you were carrying. The next day, we went grocery shopping together. I caught myself automatically reaching for the almond milk Emily used to buy, then stopped. Diane noticed, didn't comment. We picked regular 2% instead. That felt like something. She asked me to fix the wobbly hinge on her hallway door. I did, replaced a thermostat battery, mowed her lawn without her asking. Small things, but they made me feel useful, like I was adding, not just occupying. Neighbors started noticing. Glances turned longer. A couple from across the street waved tighter, slower. I knew the whispers had started. That's the guy from the Reed's place. She took him in. It's quick, isn't it? Let him talk. Diane didn't seem to care. And I was done performing for the block. A manila envelope came one afternoon while Diane was at work. Emily's lawyer. Divorce paperwork. Clean, cold language. No spite. Just division. I read through the terms. Nothing surprising, but seeing it printed made it final. I signed. When Diane came home, I handed her the envelope. So, that's done, I said. She nodded, then hugged me. Not out of pity, but presence. I exhaled into her shoulder. Not grief, not guilt. Just air. Just space. Like the beginning of something I didn't have to name yet. It was a Sunday when she came. I'd just finished sweeping the porch, something I'd never used to do when it was my own. Diane was inside making eggs and humming some song I didn't recognize. It was a good morning. One of those calm ones, where the light feels a little softer, and for a second you forget what the last few months have been. Then I saw Emily walking up the driveway. Hair down, no heels, just jeans and a plain tee. She looked smaller. Not physically, just in that way people do when they're not sure they should be where they are. I stepped out before she could knock, met her at the bottom step. "Hey," she said, trying to smile. "Hey." She glanced around like she was looking for proof of something. "I figured it would be you answering," she added quietly. We stood in silence a beat too long. Diane didn't appear, which I was grateful for. She was probably watching from the kitchen, but knew enough to stay inside. Emily motioned to the steps. "Can we talk, just for a minute?" I nodded. We sat. Two people who used to share a bed now side by side on someone else's porch. She didn't rush it. That's what caught me off guard. I expected nerves, apologies, maybe even anger, but all I got was a deep breath and something that sounded like truth. I chased something because I thought I was losing myself. Thought if I felt new to someone else, I'd feel alive again. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. But I didn't feel new. I just felt lost in a different place. I didn't interrupt. I wanted to. I had questions I could have asked months ago, but none of them mattered now. "I'm not here to change anything," she added. "I just didn't want the last thing between us to be silence." I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't the villain, just a person who broke something and didn't know how to fix it. "I'm not angry," I said. That surprised her. "Not anymore," I added. "But I can't go back to pretending." She nodded. Looked down at her hands. "Is it serious?" she asked, eyes flicking toward the door. I didn't answer right away. "I'm here," I said, finally. "That should tell you enough." She nodded again, slowly. "I loved you." "I know." We sat there a moment longer. Just two people, mid-chapter, in very different books. And she stood. "Thank you for letting me say it," she said. I didn't follow her down the steps. I didn't watch her walk away. I just stayed seated until I heard her car fade off down the street. Diane opened the door and stepped out holding a mug. "She needed closure," she said, handing it to me. I looked up at her. I needed the door closed. We didn't talk more about it. We didn't dissect it or try to label what came next.
I signed the final documents that evening, slid them into the return envelope, sealed them. It didn't feel like an ending, more like a book I wasn't going to reread. Later, as we stood in the hallway, Diane wrapped her arms around my waist from behind. No words, just warmth, steadiness. I leaned back into her, closed my eyes. This wasn't a rebound. It wasn't an escape. It was a home I hadn't expected, and it held. The house felt different now. Not new, not flashy, just lived in the right way. Diane's kitchen table had 2 mugs every morning. Not set, not staged, just part of the rhythm. One for her, one for me. Most days we didn't even say good morning until halfway through the cup. It wasn't silence, it was ease. I never moved back to my old house, never even checked if the utilities were shut off. At some point, Diane handed me a spare key with a shrug. "You basically live here," she said. She was right. I started leaving my shoes by the front door. My toothbrush sat in the bathroom beside hers. There was a shared list on the fridge. Groceries, errands, random reminders. Once I added napkins in the same ink she'd used to write "Remind Daniel to water the porch herbs," and it felt right, like something small but whole. We didn't talk about defining anything. No "where is this going" conversations. It wasn't avoidance. It just didn't need saying. It was already happening in the way we cooked together, in the way I'd fix a loose hinge without being asked, in how she texts me, "Home late, don't worry," without it being some kind of test. One Saturday, we started tearing down the old fence between her backyard and what used to be mine. It had been mostly for privacy, but privacy wasn't the goal anymore. "I was thinking we could plant something here," she said, wiping sweat from her neck with the sleeve of her t-shirt. "Maybe tomatoes, herbs, something that needs attention." "Wildflowers, too," I said. "Something that knows how to grow without being told." She looked at me and smiled. Not the first time she'd done that, but it still hit me like sunlight. We turned the narrow space between the yards into a bed of soil. Rough at first, clumpy, uneven, but it loosened. We worked side by side, hands in the dirt, not saying much. It was quiet, focused, like building something you don't need to show off. Took a few weeks, but green shoots started rising. Tomato vines staked in, basil, rosemary, lavender. By early fall, the wildflowers began to scatter along the edge. No real pattern, just color in motion. Around the neighborhood, whispers turned into narrative. "She took in the Reed boy. He left his wife for the woman next door. Shame. They seem like such a nice couple." I heard it once walking past someone's open garage. The words weren't meant for me, but I didn't flinch. I just kept walking. Diane heard it too, more than once, but she never reacted. Didn't try to change their minds. "You let people think what they need to think," she said. "We know what's real." And she was right. We didn't owe anyone an explanation. We just lived. Nights were different now. Not exciting or dramatic, just steady. Dishes clinking in the sink, a light on in the hallway, her reading while I wrapped up an email, my hand brushing her ankle under the blanket, a glance that said more than a paragraph ever could. The trust came back slowly, not because she broke it. It wasn't about her. It was me relearning what it felt like to be wanted without wondering, to be looked at without being measured. Diane didn't ask for performance. She didn't keep score. She just showed up, again and again. Sometimes we'd sit out on the back porch after dark, bare feet on the wooden steps, garden in view, a soft breeze, street quiet, her head on my shoulder. "Feels like something solid," I said one night. She nodded without moving. "Because it is." No declarations, no big scenes, just a life reshaping itself around what was left, what was chosen, and what had quietly bloomed in the space where the fence used to be. We saw her again at the park. It was a cool Sunday, the kind where the breeze makes you grateful for long sleeves and warm drinks. Diane and I had taken our mugs with us, walking the trail that loops near the pond. Ducks gliding across the surface, kids on bikes. Familiar sounds, familiar stillness. Emily was sitting on a bench near the playground, alone, no book, no phone, just watching the water. We passed without changing pace. She looked up, caught my eyes. No startle, no smile, just a soft nod. I returned it.
That was it. No conversation, no awkward pause, just a shared look between two people who used to carry a story that no longer needed to be told. I glanced at Diane. She didn't ask what I felt. She didn't need to. Her hand tightened around mine for a second, then let go. We kept walking. Back home, the garden was still messy in its late-season way. The basil had bolted, the tomatoes were thinning, but the wildflowers, somehow still blooming, held on to color like they refused to admit the season was ending. We sat on the patio, 2 chairs pulled close, a blanket between us. I watched the way the vines curled around the stakes we'd planted, not rushed, just certain. "This feels like something solid," I said again, not even realizing I was repeating myself. She smiled. "You've said that before. Still true." The truth is, there was no dramatic rebirth, no giant transformation. My life didn't flip upside down or suddenly sparkle. It just settled. The cracks didn't close perfectly, but things grew through them. Real things. I used to think healing would feel like waking up brand new, like a fresh coat of paint, but it's not like that. It's slower, like learning to breathe differently, like letting someone see you on your worst day and realizing they don't flinch. Diane never asked me to be better, just to be here. And I was. Some nights we'd sit out back long after the sun dipped, letting the air shift cooler around us. The garden lights would flicker on, catching her profile in that soft yellow glow. We didn't talk about the past. It wasn't erased. It just didn't need revisiting. She'd rest her head on my shoulder. Sometimes we didn't even say goodnight before heading inside. One day, I pulled out the last remnants of the fence. The roots were stubborn, held deep into the soil like memory, but they came out eventually. And where they'd been, we planted new things, things that would take time. I kept thinking about that line Diane said early on. People need stories. I used to think it was just about books or gossip or news. Now I know it's more than that. People need stories because they're maps. They help you understand the shape of things, where you've been, what you've survived, where you're choosing to stand now. And this was ours. Not flashy, not perfect, but true. Sometimes we'd hear someone on the sidewalk slow down near our house. We'd feel their glance. The neighborhood still talked. Probably always would. But we didn't flinch anymore. Let them think what they want. Let them write their own version. We had coffee in the morning, 2 chairs on the patio, a list on the fridge, a quiet routine that didn't need defending. Some endings are really just the ground clearing for something new. Not bigger, just more honest. And now we plant, we water, we grow.